Some women move through rooms like unsolved riddles, their presence a quiet storm that unsettles the air without a word. Have you ever watched a man's composure fray in such a woman's orbit, not because she demands it, but because something in her unearths the truths his lips refuse to speak? His hands might fold into fists as if crushing the words he dare not say. His feet might shift toward her, even as his gaze darts away, as if his bones remember a direction his mind rejects. These are not random gestures. They are the body's rebellion against the ego's carefully constructed lies. The unconscious breaking through the armor of identity care, or it's nothing. In the language of Carl Jung, they are the shadow made visible, the parts of himself he has disowned, now dancing in the light of her presence. The body is a vault of secrets, but it is no liar. While the mind spins narratives to protect the ego from vulnerability, the flesh speaks in a tongue older than language, a flinch, a lean, a pause that lingers like a question. For men raised in a world that equates stoicism with strength, this dissonance is a quiet crisis. They learn to mask longing as indifference, to bury adoration under jokes, to let their voices harden when their hearts soften. But the body cannot be trained. It remembers the primal truth that Jung recognized. We are drawn not just to what we need to become whole. Her energy steady, unyielding, rooted in self-knowledge, becomes a mirror. And his body, in its clumsy honesty, cannot help but lean into the reflection. Consider the first of these rebellions, the unconscious mirroring. You have seen it, perhaps without naming it. She crosses her legs, and a moment later, so does he. She rests her chin in her palm, and his hand drifts to his own jaw, as if pulled by an invisible thread. This is not mimicry. It is the body's attempt to bridge a divide. Jung calls this projection, but it is also a form of yearning. When a man mirrors a woman's gestures, his body is saying what his mind cannot. I want to be close enough to share her rhythm, to step into the space she occupies, even if only physically. It is a primal urge toward integration, the very individuation. Jung spoke of where the self recognizes in another a piece of itself it has lost or buried. Stoic philosophers might call this a surrender to impulse, but they would miss the deeper truth. The body knows what the soul needs. A man raised to suppress emotion, to stay in control, will find his shoulders relaxing when she speaks, his posture softening, as if his muscles have remembered a state of safety he forgot existed. Trauma, that invisible weight, teaches the body to harden shoulders hunched, jaw tight, a permanent flinch against the world. But her presence, calm and unassuming, dissolves that armor. Not because she demands it, but because her energy is a reminder that safety is not the absence of threat, but the presence of a space where one can let guard down. His body mirrors her because it craves that space. That ease, that wholeness she embodies without effort. You might mistake this mirroring for mere politeness, for unconscious habit, but watch closely. It happens only with her. In other company, his posture is rigid, his gestures deliberate. With her, he is unmoored from the script of masculinity he has memorized. His hand brushes his hair the way hers does. His laughter rises to the same pitch. His pauses align with hers as if they share a secret language. This is not coincidence. It is the body's refusal to lie. It is proof that his attraction runs deeper than surface desire, that he is drawn to the essence of her, to the way she moves through the world with a quiet certainty he has never allowed himself. The second rebellion is subtler, but no less revealing. The compulsion to protect, even when protection is unnecessary. He might reach for her arm when she steps off a curb, though the street is empty. He might position himself between her and a crowd, even if the crowd is harmless. It is not that he thinks her weak. It is that his body is acting out a narrative older than civilization. Narrative, where guarding what is precious is the truest expression of care. Jung would recognize this as the animus in action, the masculine archetype that seeks to protect not out of dominance, but out of reverence. His ego might scoff at such sentimentality, but his hands, his stance, his sudden alertness, these tell a different story. This compulsion is often mistaken for possessiveness, but the two could not be more different. Possessiveness is rooted in fear, the fear of loss, of inadequacy, of being replaced. Protection in this primal form is rooted in awe. It is the body saying, "This thing is rare, and I must honor it." A man who feels nothing for a woman will step aside, will let her navigate the world alone. But a man whose unconscious recognizes in her a kind of wholeness he lacks will move without thinking, his body positioning itself as a shield. It is not about control. It is about reverence. He might later laugh it off, call it instinct, but instinct is just the unconscious made visible. Notice how this protection shifts. It is not loud or performative. It is in the way he slows his pace to match hers, in the way he remembers her coffee order after one mention, in the way he places his hand on the small of her back when guiding her through a door knot, as a claim, but as a gesture of care. These are not acts of a man trying to impress. They are acts of a man whose body has already surrendered to the truth his mind resists. Trauma, again, plays its part. A man who has learned that vulnerability is dangerous will channel his longing into action. because action feels safer than emotion. He cannot say, I care, so his body says it for him in 1,000 small, unguarded ways. You might dismiss these gestures as chivalry, as leftover courtesy from a bygone era. But ask yourself, does he do this for everyone, or is it only her? The body does not waste energy on pretense. It reserves its most tender acts for those who stir something primal, something unnameable. His compulsion to protect is not about her weakness. It is about his own need to connect, to express, through action, what he cannot through words. It is the shadow's way of reaching out, of saying, I am not the closed-off man I pretend to be. I am capable of care, of reverence, of love, if only you will let me show it. The third rebellion is the most dangerous, the most revealing, the loss of words. A man who prides himself on wit, on articulation, will find himself stammering in her presence. His sentences will trail off, his jokes will fall flat, his usual confidence will give way to a kind of awkwardness that feels almost painful. This is not shyness. It is the ego's surrender. Jung spoke of the ego as the mask we wear to navigate the world, the persona that keeps us safe from judgment. But in her presence, that mask slips. His words fail because they cannot contain the magnitude of what he feels, the longing, the awe, the recognition that she is a force he cannot control or categorize. Stoic wisdom teaches that silence is often wiser than speech, but this is not the silence of wisdom. It is the silence of a man who has encountered something that defies language. His mind races to find the right words, the clever lines, the perfect response, but his tongue betrays him. This is the body's final rebellion. It refuses to let the ego hide behind words. It forces him into the raw, unvarnished truth of the moment I am affected by her. Watch how he recovers. He might laugh too loudly, or change the subject abruptly, or pretend he was merely distracted. But the pause, that moment of linguistic surrender, lingers like a fingerprint. It is proof that she has pierced the armor, that she has reached the part of him that exists beyond pretense. Trauma often makes us cling to words. As a defensive, we can articulate our feelings, we can control them. But her energy disarms that defense. It leaves him speechless, not because he has nothing to say, but because what he feels is too big for words. You might think this loss of words is a sign of disinterest, of discomfort, but discomfort comes in many forms. There is the discomfort of boredom, of irritation, of obligation. Then there is the discomfort of being seen. A man who is unaffected by you will speak smoothly, confidently, as if reading from a script. A man who is deeply, unconsciously drawn to you will stumble, will falter, will let his silence speak louder than any words. His body is saying, I cannot hide from her. She sees me, even when I do not want aliens. The mirroring, the compulsion to protect, the loss of words, not isolated incidents. They are threads in a larger tapestry, woven from the same cloth. The body's refusal to lie. Together, they tell the story of a man whose unconscious has recognized in a woman something it has been seeking all along: wholeness, safety, truth. Jung called this the process of individuation, the journey toward becoming fully human by integrating the shadow, the ego, and the archetypal forces that shape us. In her presence, he is forced to confront the parts of himself he has disowned, the tenderness, the vulnerability, the capacity for deep feeling, and his body, in its bingo honest trauma, that invisible sculptor, shapes how we love and desire. It teaches us to fear vulnerability, to equate need with weakness, to build walls around our hearts. But the body remembers what trauma tries to erase: the need to connect, to belong. A woman who carries deep feminine energy, rooted in self-worth, unafraid of silence, secure in her own rhythm, becomes a catalyst for this remembering. She does not demand that he lower his walls. She simply exists in a way that makes them feel unnecessary. Her presence is a question, not a command. What would it mean to be fully alive? You might wonder if these signs are reliable, if you are reading too much into a gesture, a pause, a stumble. But the body does not traffic in ambiguity. It speaks in absolutes. A man's ego can lie, his words can deceive, but his muscles, his posture, his reflexes, these are loyal to the truth. They will betray him every time, because they are loyal to something deeper than his conscious desires. They are loyal to his soul, as lawyers would remind us that we cannot control another's feelings, nor should we try. Our power lies in our own self-possession, in our refusal to seek validation from those who cannot give it freely. A woman who understands this does not parse his gestures for proof of love. She recognizes them as evidence of his own journey. She does not need him to mirror her, to protect her, to stumble over his words. She is complete in herself, and that completeness is what draws him in. It is the paradox of attraction. The more we stand in our own truth, the more others are drawn to of the anima, the feminine archetype within the masculine psyche, as a force that demands recognition. When a man encounters a woman who embodies his anima, his unacknowledged desires, his buried tenderness, his body cannot help but react. It is a collision of the conscious and unconscious, a meeting of what is known and what is repressed. The mirroring, the protection, the silence, these are not about her. They are about him, about the parts. You do not need to decode these signs to prove your worth. Your worth is not in his reaction to you, but in the fact that you exist, unapologetic, and whole. The woman who understands this moves through the world with a quiet power. She does not chase his approval, because she knows that approval is a mirror only reflecting back what she already believes about herself. She does not need him to stumble over his words to know she is seen. She sees herself as the liberation Jung hinted at, the freedom that comes from individuation, from recognizing that we are complete unto ourselves. When you stop seeking validation in his gestures, in his words, in his reactions, you give him permission to stop hiding. Not because you demand it, but because your wholeness creates a space where his own wholeness becomes possible. His body will continue to lie for a while. His ego will cling to control. But eventually, the truth will out. It always does. Getting someone to desire you. It is about becoming the kind of person who does not need desire to feel complete. It is about standing in your truth so fully that others cannot help but stand in theirs. The mirroring, the protection, the silence, these are just byproducts of that truth. They are not the goal. That he rebelling against his words. When you notice the mirroring, the protectiveness, the loss of speech, remember, this is not about you. It is about him, about the journey his soul is taking toward wholeness. Your role is not to guide him, or to fix him, or to prove yourself worthy of his attention. Your role is to keep standing in your own light, unapologetic and free. The woman who knows this, lying. She knows that the truest desire is not in the admission, but in the struggle to admit it. And she chooses to be with someone who is brave enough to struggle with himself, with his ego, with the truth of what he feels. You are responsible for your own. And in owning your truth, you give others permission to own theirs. That is the power of deep feminine energy. It does not demand, it invites. It does not chase, it creates space. And in that space, even the most guarded heart cannot help. The body always tells the truth. It is up to us